Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and it is officially the end of another month, and that means it's time for the new release roundup, this time for June of 2021. As per usual, a list of all the movies I'm going to be talking about and time codes to those reviews will be linked in the description below, so if you want to hear me talk about a certain movie, then by all means skip to that one. And with all of that out of the way, let's dive in, starting with The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. This was directed by Michael Chavez, who directed The Curse of La Llorona. This is the third Conjuring movie in the Conjuring series, and it sees the return of Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as Lorraine and Ed Warren, respectively. This is loosely based, and I say loosely based with all the emphasis I can, on the infamous The Devil Made Me Do It case. And by that I mean there's literally a few scenes with The Devil Made Me Do It stuff, and then it goes into its own thing. While I am very familiar with the Conjuring universe, surprisingly, I'm the least familiar with the main Conjuring movies. I've seen pretty much all of the spin-offs, and they have varied in quality, from bad to actually pretty good. But I've never seen the first Conjuring, and I will be watching that for Scary Mania, hint hint. And The Conjuring 2, I believe I watched at home, but I really don't remember. So I was walking into this pretty blind, and I gotta say, I thought this movie was a pleasant surprise. This movie primarily was a mystery in that Ed and Lorraine Warren are trying to clear the name of this young man who is framed for this crime with the excuse of the devil made me do it. Lorraine's trying to use her more supernatural powers to try and figure stuff out, and Ed is more than willing to try and help her and figure out stuff on his own. And I found it to be very intriguing. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is in the trailer, unfortunately, but it's the scene in which Ed and Lorraine are helping this cop with an unrelated case as a you scratch my back, I scratch your back thing. And Lorraine goes down this rabbit hole of something bad happened here, and you see the events happening before her and you realize she has stepped into a completely different realm, only for that realm to lead her to a cliff. And Ed has this great look of, Lorraine! And he's like, don't fall. And Lorraine's like, Ed! And then the demon is like, time to take a dip. And the demon pulls her down and Ed catches her. It's a really, really good scene. And I guess it's a good place to parlay into Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were my favorite part of this movie. When they were on the hunt, trying to figure all of this out, like I said, I thought it was very intriguing. But the biggest surprise for me was seeing John Noble. For some context, John Noble was Lord Denethor in The Return of the King. One of those characters that you feel nothing but pity and hatred for, all at the same time. It's a weird feeling, but there it is. And John Noble only has a few scenes here, but he sells his part very well. Seeing him, I was like, Denethor! As far as flaws, I think the biggest one I would have to say is that there's definitely some unnecessary stuff. There's some plot points that I felt like could have been edited out. Like, for example, Ed has a heart problem. He has a heart attack near the beginning of the movie. And the movie tries to play up that his heart might legitimately be in danger. And it's touched up on a couple of times, but not enough for me to, remember. I think if it were phased out, then the movie would have been fine. Again, I haven't seen the other movies, so if this was an issue in 1 or 2, then I'll walk that back, but on the whole, as of right now, I would just sat there like, why did he have a heart attack again? But on the whole, I did find this movie enjoyable. I'm going to give it a good rating. There was definitely some good thrills, chills, and some spills. And on the whole, I thought this movie was pretty dang good. In the Heights was directed by John M. Chu, who also directed Crazy Rich Asians, and this movie is an adaptation of the brilliant Broadway play created from the brilliant mind of Lin-Manuel Miranda. It tells the story of Usnavi, played by Anthony Ramos, a young man who is trying to save up enough money to where he can leave his neighborhood of Washington Heights to go to the Dominican Republic and rebuild his father's bar. There's a lot of other stuff, but that's the main plot thread. When I heard that this movie was finally getting made, I was sitting there and I was thinking to myself, why wasn't this movie made first? Because, again, for context's sake, In the Heights, in their Broadway run, was in the early 2010s. Moana debuted in 2016. I figured since Lin-Manuel Miranda was such a rising talent, you would imagine that In the Heights would be the first movie that ended up getting made of his. It turned out to be Moana, and it's not to dunk on Moana. I enjoy Moana very much. All that I'm saying is that out of the movies of his that has been made, In the Heights was the one that I was the most anticipating. And while I don't think this movie is necessarily perfect, I thought this movie had a lot of strengths. Firstly, the songs are just great. The songs are the reason to watch this movie. Specifically 96,000 and the main song In the Heights. There are several other good ones, but those two stick out in my mind immediately. The majority of the characters, Usnavi, Benny, Vanessa, but my favorite character was the abuela. She's played by, and I'm going to try and get this name right, Olga Meredez. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but she was fantastic. Her solo song number, Pacience y Fe, is just fantastic and tells a story that should be an entire movie itself into like a 4-minute song number. And she sells it all perfectly. I would have loved to have seen a movie with just her. And like I said earlier, this movie has a lot going on. The synopsis that I gave was literally like just one plot thread. There's Benny trying to get into a business school. There's Vanessa and the tension with her father, played by Jimmy Smits. And that's just naming a couple that I can think off the top of my head. The point I'm trying to get at is that the movie tends to feel unfocused at times. I was heavily invested in the Usnavi stuff. I wanted him to get El Sueñito off the ground and get enough money for that. But when it diverted away from him, my attention started to slip a little bit. For example, there's an entire song number about rumors, and it all takes place in a beauty salon. And I don't want to say I would take that song out because I enjoyed the song, but I was just sitting there like, okay, the purpose of this song is to sell that the neighborhood is going away. That's sad and all, but what does this have to do with Usnavi? Usnavi's story arc for me was so strong that its orbit kind of weirdly pushed away everything else. I think I just made science cry, but I'm sure you all get my point. But at the end of the day, I am not made of stone. I love musicals, and I thought this movie was a great time. I'm going to give this a great rating. It is very sad that this movie is underperforming, so if you have not seen it, watch it on HBO Max or go to a theater and see it, because it is well worth your time. Luca, aka the movie that is killing Pixar? Question mark? It tells the story of a sea monster named Luca, voiced by Tremblay. He is told throughout his entire life to stay far away from the surface world. However, he meets a human named Alberto, voiced by Grazer, who invites him onto the surface, and it turns out that Alberto is a sea monster himself. And the two get into a wild and woolly adventure which culminates in a triathlon that involves swimming, eating pasta, and biking. That's my kind of triathlon. I should train for something like that. If you've followed me for any length of time, you'll know that I have a lot of time for Pixar. Pixar is the gold standard of animation. And so when I heard this was coming out on Disney+, there was a part of me that was like, man, another one that is not getting a big screen release. Thank God this is not going to be a trend. But I watched it the night it dropped, and I actually really enjoyed it. But however, there was a lot of people who were saying something along the lines of, this is a good movie, but it's not up to Pixar's stamp of approval. And there was just some very weird statements being thrown about how Pixar is finally losing its touch and that this is going to break Pixar's back. And I don't know how to respond to that, but all that I will say is that this studio has survived the financial failure of The Good Dinosaur, even though that movie is secretly good, and Cars 2, which is the worst Pixar movie, despite it being sorta okay. If this studio hasn't died by now, then it probably never will. And again, as far as the quality of Luca, I did enjoy this movie. Is this top-tier Pixar? No, not even close. But Pixar lives in a rarefied air that their lower-tier movies are good at worst, and their best rank among some of the greatest movies of all time in any era or any genre ever. The biggest compliment that I can give to this movie is the animation. Having seen now all of Pixar's output, I can safely say that watching some of their older shorts like Luxo Jr. and Tin Toy and seeing Luca is like night and day. It's a weird privilege to see a studio go from like point A to point Z. This town in Italy is so detailed that you feel like it legitimately exists, sea monsters included. I also really enjoyed the cast in this movie. I especially enjoyed the two boys, voiced by Tremblay and Grazer. They have a really good chemistry together, and these two kid actors are really starting to become like my favorite kid actors. I'm really gonna have to start paying attention to them because I think they're gonna go places. I also like the young girl and her father, voiced by Sacha Baron Cohen, who has the one arm. The pesto pasta they eat looks so delicious. I'm sure Binging with Babish is writing a script for it as we speak. As far as flaws go, the villain is probably the biggest one. Don't get me wrong, I don't think this is necessarily a bad villain, but this villain is so over the top that he's literally every Italian stereotype, like, stuffed into a Sonny Corleone action figure. I'm surprised he didn't do this once or twice in the movie, but it's a kid's movie, so that would probably not be wise. His OTT-ness really took me out of the movie, just to be like, oh, to be a fly on the wall during those recording sessions, to this guy just going to town, and the sound engineer just stifling a laugh like this. But despite the fact that I don't think this movie is perfect, this is not the movie to kill Pixar. Pixar would have to create a real dud in order to do that, and so far, they haven't really done that. Even my least favorite, Cars 2, is still enjoyable in parts. But as far as Luca goes, I'm going to give this a good rating. Like I said, not top-tier Pixar. It is a very simple story, but like I said in my review on Twitter, just like the pasta that these characters eat, it is a very simple movie, but a delicious one nonetheless. The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. Did anyone ask for this? I'm honestly asking, did anybody ask for this? Nevertheless, this was directed by Patrick Hughes, who also directed the original movie, The Hitman's Bodyguard, and it picks up with the main character, Michael Bryce, played by Ryan Reynolds, who is on sabbatical. However, he is taken out of sabbatical by Salma Hayek and Samuel L. Jackson. I do not remember their names. I think Samuel L. Jackson's character is named Darius something. I held off on watching this movie for quite a bit. Not for any reason other than I just had stuff to do. But I could have easily avoided this one and it would have made no difference. This is easily like one of the more forgettable movies that I've seen all year. As far as pros go, they're weirdly kind of like, not really pros as in I got a kick out of seeing that. The biggest compliment that I can give to this movie is whoever cast Antonio Banderas in this movie needs a raise, because he must have been having the time of his life filming this. This pretty much could have been his audition tape to play the next Bond villain, and I wouldn't put it past him. They need to sign him up to do it. But I think that's about it. The rest of the movie is just super forgettable. Ryan Reynolds plays Ryan Reynolds, like literally the same character that he plays in almost every movie. Like, he's just silently waiting for Deadpool 3 to start shooting. Samuel L. Jackson, as fun as he is Samuel L. Jackson in the movie. He has a couple good one-liners, but then there's Salma Hayek. Now, I haven't seen many movies with her in it, and I'm inclined to say that I like that she's been in some good movies, but wow, she is so dominant over this movie with her performance, and it's inescapable. She plays the wife of Darius Kincaid, or wait, there's his last name. She plays the wife of Darius Kincaid, and she is so foul-mouthed that I swear Samuel L. Jackson almost gave her the dirty look and be like, saying a lot of curse words is my gimmick, lady. She is so loud and so over the top in this movie that I was just like, oh god, just please, just end it. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is in the trailer. It's when she's talking to Michael Bryce and she's like, we want to have a baby, and Michael Bryce is like, I wouldn't trust a Chucky doll around you. And he is correct. At the end of the day, Salma Hayek's performance is very annoying and very just domineering, but I don't really have the heart to give this movie a horrid, because all that I can say is at least they tried, so out of the goodness of my heart, I'm going to say that this is just plain old forgettable. I have a feeling this will be on my worst movies of the year list, but like I said, I just don't have the heart to do it. And let's wrap up this video by talking about F9. This was directed by Justin Lin, who has directed many of the Fast and Furious movies before this, and well, this is yet another Fast and Furious movie. The gang is all back. This time, Dom Toretto, played by Vin Diesel, again, learns that his long-lost brother, Jacob, played by John Cena, here's getting this meme out of the way, and his name is John Cena! Is a secret agent after yet another piece of technology that will destroy the... well, you know. When I walked out of this movie, I just did not like it. Like, I went to see it with my dad, and I was just... like, I was literally like this. I was just like, was that bad, or did I imagine that? I was like that for one specific reason, and I'll touch on that in a second, but for now, let's talk about the rest of the movie. I have seen reviews where this movie has gotten absolutely shellacked, and for me, I always try and form my own opinion. I look at other reviews just for reference sake, but at the end of the day, it falls on my opinion. And I have very conflicting thoughts on this movie. First, the good, in that I liked most of the acting. I thought it was actually pretty solid. My two favorite parts of this movie were Tyrese and Ludacris. I thought they were both just... they brought so much life to this. The gimmick of Tyrese sets up the punchline and Ludacris knocks it out of the park does get played out, but it is Tyrese and Ludacris, and they just make me laugh, and so whenever they were on the screen together, I just enjoyed that. As far as bad stuff goes, what you have heard is true, in that this movie does not give a damn about physics or logic. This movie farts in the general direction of Isaac Newton. There are several scenarios in which one or more of these characters should have died, like several times over. And not only do they not die, they walk out without a scratch. Like, kids, I don't know what my age demographic is like watching these videos, but kids, just know this. A car is not an acceptable substitute to break your fall. As a matter of fact, you might as well land on the concrete. But if you land on the car, you will break hips, ribs, arms, and a whole litany of other injuries. Don't let this movie fool you. If you land on a car, you will get hurt. But on the opposite side of that coin, some of the action scenes were legitimately kind of awesome in like a lizard brain kind of way. The best part is, the part that is the pinnacle of that is the magnet battle, and that the entire time when these people were using the magnets both off and on, I was just thinking of the Jesse Pinkman clip where he's like, "Yeah, bitch! Magnets!" I guess what I'm trying to get at is that this movie really is kind of dependent on how accepting you are of the logic of this series. If you have gone into it thinking that these movies are ridiculous and stupid for all the wrong reasons, you're going to absolutely hate this movie. However, if you've been on the good side of ridiculous and stupid, then you're going to like this movie. I've been more forgiving of this series, specifically F1, 2, and 3. I think The Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, and Tokyo Drift are the best movies of the series, with 5 being the lone exception. And with all of the other movies slowly getting more ridiculous, including The Rock pushing a torpedo in one of the later ones, I was just like, okay, this is stupid, but it's enjoyable. This movie not only jumps the shark, but it does a shooting star press, a 630, and a double moonsault over the shark. And I have such conflicting thoughts about this movie, like I said, because of all the things I mentioned, but also I have a feeling that this movie was self-aware enough to where it knew that it was this stupid and so didn't try to be any more than it was, which is weirdly admirable. I don't know what to make of this. And so for that reason alone, I'm not going to give this movie a rating, because I was originally going to say this is a good rating. However, there was definitely stuff that I was just like, oh, come on, that is just so annoying. Then there were other times where I thought that was stupid, but that was cool. And so I'm at a bit of a crossroads there. What I will say is that if you hate or like this movie, I do happily understand. However, there is one part of the movie that I gotta admit I got a little mad over, and it has nothing to do with the movie itself. This is actually a spoiler, so if you'd like to fast forward to the ending, there'll be a time code there. But spoiler warning starting right now. The final scene of the movie is where everybody is in the East LA house. It's being rebuilt, and there's a big cookout. And then Vin Diesel's like, hey, we got one missing. And Mia's like, he's coming. And we hear a car rev, and we see a blue car turn into the drive. For those of you not familiar with this series, that was Brian's car. I nearly walked out of the theater steaming mad, because when Paul Walker died, I was very sad. I mean, I'm sure a lot of other people were sad, but I was very sad, because this was a guy who was taken from us in his prime, and just generally liked by everybody. And his character was liked by everybody. So much so that sometimes I still see cars with tuna no crust on the back of their windshield as an homage to the original Fast and the Furious. But when I saw that blue car, I was just like, oh no, don't tell me they're bringing him back from the dead. And when I expressed this concern to my father, he was like, well, you don't know who's in that car. And at first I was like, well, who else could it be? And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, they didn't say that it was Brian in the car. This doesn't necessarily knock this movie down in points, in my opinion, but just for the sake of them teasing Brian possibly coming back, I don't know how I feel about that. That just feels very scummy to me. Because we're not talking about someone like Sol Kang, whose character died in the movie, but Sol Kang is alive in real life. We're talking about Brian, who's the person who played the character actually died due to tragic circumstances. And so to bring him back, I feel like would just be a spit in the face. I may be putting the cart before the horse, and in the next movie it could be like Jacob or Brian's son. He may had a son, like a secret son, or with Eva Mendez's character. Who knows? I may be jumping the gun, but I was legitimately concerned, and in a way I still am. But that is all for the new release roundup, guys. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. I'm going to be releasing a channel update video soon, in which I'm going to be talking about the future of the channel. It's not going anywhere, I promise. Just there's going to be some tweaks to the content, and specifically to the new release roundup. I'm going to be changing the format a little, but that will be at a later time. But if you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, and if you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam. I'll see you in the next one.